In the 2018 and 2019 NBA season, the Miami Heat was led by a 37-year-old Dwayne Wade, who was in the midst of a farewell tour, and in the 2018 and 2019 NBA season, the Miami Heat finished 10th in the Eastern Conference and was not even close to making it to the NBA playoffs. In the 2018 and 2019 NBA season, Tyler Herro was playing for the University of Kentucky, Bam Adebayo was a rookie for the Miami Heat, Duncan Robinson was in the NBA G League, and Jimmy Butler was categorized to be known as a mean guy to his NBA teammates. But this odd season has been filled with star talent, dynamic duos is what the NBA has been about, and then there's the Miami Heat. They weren't supposed to be this good without the star power of these other teams like the Lakers or Clippers, but they're still holding their own. Now what makes them so good? They come behind the leadership of coach Erik Spoelstra and all-star wing Jimmy Butler. Miami became one of the best teams in the league. As has often been the case with the franchise for the last 25 years, its success can be attributed to Pat Riley's desire to remain competitive. His cleverness when putting pieces together and the famous culture that he and Spoelstra have built together over the last years. During his run as the Heat's president, Pat Riley has been right most of the time in committing to certain players, and in the few occasions in which he wasn't, he's been capable of maneuvering out of bad financial situations to improve the team's situation. And that's exactly what happened after a mediocre season in which Miami's lone bright spot was Dwayne Wade's retirement tour. Locked with a couple of bad contracts that were hurting the team's capacity to acquire better talent, and seemingly with no room to operate, Riley proved why he's one of the league's best executives by moving several players on his way to acquiring Jimmy Butler in free agency. Now the move, which seemed predestined as both parts have been interested in coming together for a while, paid off immediately as the Heat had a bounce-back year in which they were among the East's best four teams during most of the season. Their success became a surprise, as not only had Butler been seen as a locker room cancer in his previous stops, but there were also many unexpected players making contributions night in and night out. Jimmy was again producing excellent numbers, but perhaps his greatest contribution came in helping rookie point guards Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Herro, second-year shooting guard Duncan Robinson, and third-year forward Bam Adebayo develop into solid and reliable players that helped the team win games. Still, despite their improvements during the regular season as well as on the seeding games by the time the playoffs started, few people, if any, they continued to impress by dominating the Indiana Pacers in their first-round series, and they were matched in the second round against the Bucks team that had the league's best overall record and was expected to make it to at least the conference finals. Most analysts expected Miami to present Milwaukee with a serious challenge before being eliminated, but then, before the Bucks had time to realize what was going on, Butler and his teammates had just closed out the series in 5 games to earn a berth in the conference finals. For all the success the team had during the season, no one expected the Heat to upset the league-leading Bucks, much less to embarrass them by winning the series in what could have been a second sweep if not for a missed call in their final moments of regulation in Game 4. But now that they've made it to the conference finals for the first time since LeBron James left the team, it's worth it to take a look at the things that have fueled their unexpectedly deep playoff run so far. The first thing we must address is the fact that entering the series, it seemed like this was the most favorable matchup for the Heat, as they were the only team that had defeated the Bucks 2 times during regular season. Their effectiveness from long range looked like the perfect weapon against the defense that was often willing to allow open three-pointers in an attempt to close the paint as much as possible, and they made the most out of it, shooting over 35 from three-point range on all 5 games. With the lone exception being the game where Butler scored 40 points, on the other end of the court, Miami also had an invaluable advantage as the Toronto Raptors had already discovered the best way to contain Milwaukee's offense in the previous year. Thus, they closed the paint in the previous year to limit Giannis' drives and force his teammates to score the ball, which, except for Middleton's heroic performance in Game 4, resulted in poor offensive performances by the Bucks more often than not. The strategy also had a direct impact on the reigning MVP numbers, as his production went from 29.5 points per game during the regular season to barely 21.7 over his 4 appearances against the Heat. But just as much as the game plan deserves credit, so do the players for increasing their defensive focus throughout the playoffs. During the regular season, Miami had the league's 12th best defensive rating, but that number has improved to 4th during their playoff games, as they limited their opponents to only 105.4 points per 100 possessions. They've been at the best during the final moments of each game, as they balanced the not-so-efficient defense during their first and third quarters with a dominant effort during their fourth quarters, in which they've allowed just 97.1 points per 100 possessions. Last but not least, coaching also played a factor in this one. Spoelstra came up with the best game plan and then made sure that his players executed it as good as anybody could have asked for. For his part, Mike Budenholzer was unable to come up with the necessary adjustments to make his team get back into the series, and was often questioned for not increasing his players' minutes despite getting behind from the first game. There's also been talk about how Miami was able to make the most out of Giannis' absence because of injury, which could also be said about their series against the Pacers as star forward Domantas Sabonis couldn't play because of injury. However, it's worth noting that while injuries could have an impact on how both series played out aside from Miami, Toronto has been the only team to have played with a fully healthy roster since the playoffs started. Also, by the time that Giannis was rolled out because of injury, the Bucks were already down 3-0 in the series, and while they mentioned how he believed that his team had a chance to come back from such a deficit, history has taught us that doing it is easier said than done, and Milwaukee wasn't the exception at this time. So in short, it's no fluke that Miami has joined the Spurs as the second team now reached the conference finals for the 7th time since 2005. Everyone in the organization has been involved in making it possible, and it starts from Riley, with him acknowledging that he made a mistake by giving big contracts to players that didn't live up to the expectations, and then making deals to send those players away and replacing them with athletes that have embraced the Heat culture. If the Heat can get past Boston, there's no telling where this team could go. It would surely make for an excellent story if Butler was able to lead his team to a championship in their first season together, but regardless of whether that ends up happening or not, they believe that they have a chance to do it, and if we've learned something, it is to never count them out.